This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm your host, co-founder, and editorial director of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, Jamie Bogner. This is episode 213 of the podcast, our annual Best in Beer edition. And co-hosting it, as always, with me today is Joe Stang. Welcome back to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you. It's nice to be back here in front of the microphone.
We are international today for the podcast. Joe is joining in remotely from Bangkok, Thailand. Joe, fill everybody in on why you are currently habitating in Bangkok, Thailand.
I'm what you call a trailing spouse. We're here. I follow my wife around the world, and it's a really good gig if you can get it. Young man, I recommend you find yourself an ambitious woman and you hold on tight.
Your wife is a powerful diplomat working for the U.S. government and representing U.S. trade and agricultural exports in the country of Thailand. And that has been the thing that has taken you all across Europe and Central America and other places. And have certainly you have capitalized on that to explore the world of beer in all of those places and build an international approach. So anyway, yeah, we are recording this remotely across the Pacific Ocean thanks to the beauty of technology. As always, this annual Best in Beer edition of the podcast is based on our print and digital editions of the magazine. Every year we try to pull together our ideas and your ideas as readers and survey completers for the magazine of what is great about beer this year. And, and so what this podcast and the issue focuses on is two sides, actually three sides of things, both what our readers vote for as their favorites every year, what we as the editors of the magazine deem to be noteworthy, special or important enough, to raise up in this past year. And then also the important and individual contributions of our critics. Those include folks like Stan Hieronymus, Kate Bernat, Samer Kadari, Don't Drink Beer's Alex Kidd, and of course, Joe and me. We all offer our personal opinions about these things through this issue. This episode is going to focus on the readers' opinions and our editorial opinions. And the next episode of the podcast that'll air next Friday will focus on each of the critics' individual approaches to these things, because any idea of what is best must take a multifaceted approach. We don't believe in one idea of best. We believe in lots and lots of concurrent ideas of best. And just through this kind of consensus and broader approach that we build some kind of communal idea of what really matters in beer. It's not one thing, it's many things. And so we try to take this multifaceted approach to it. We are going to dive into everything from your favorite breweries, who you think brews each style best, to our editor picks for the top 20 beers of 2021. But before we do that, for nearly 30 years, G&D Chillers has set the mark for quality equipment you can rely on. G&D stands above the rest as the only chiller manufacturer that engineers your glycol piping for free. G&D stands alone as the only chiller manufacturer with an in-house team of installers and engineers with 30 years of real-world field labor experience in breweries, wineries, and distilleries. Contact the Total Glycol System Design experts today at gdchillers.com. Also, this episode is sponsored by BSG Craft Brewing. Explore a whole universe of hop sensory with unique varieties like Cashmere, Comet, Triumph, Eldorado, and many more. Sourced directly from growers and processed at BSG's FSSC certified facility in Yakima to bring you only the very best hops from farmer to fermenter. For contracting, spot sales, and more info, reach out to BSG at Let's Talk Hops at bsgcraft.com. So before we get started, let's talk about this methodology a little bit, Joe. From the start, every year we run a reader survey where we ask all of our readers through email, through a web survey, to fill out and share with us what they think is the best in each of these categories, whether it's your favorite breweries by size, whether it's your favorite brewery by style. We specifically do not auto-populate or auto-complete any of their any of the typing. There's not a multiple choice test. There are other folks that do these kinds of surveys, and in order to make it easier on the folks filling out those surveys, they offer choices for people to choose from. We have found that it is much more painful and difficult for us to not, to let people type whatever they want, and for us to go and make sense of that data. But that is the best way that we can find to get an accurate and honest kind of appraisal of these things. What that means is that we spend on average every time we do this issue, 4 or 5 days just individually pouring through the data, because it's not something you can do as a machine. Somebody has to understand that Alpha King means, a Three Floyds IPA, or that Zombie Dust, is also connected to Three Floyds. They have to understand that Russian River and Pliny the Elder, people might list Pliny the Elder as their favorite brewery. Folks don't know Fat Tire, the same kind of thing. Different beer consumers approach brands in a different way than those of us in the industry may understand them. And the only way to properly parse that data out is to go through it and contextually understand what people were trying to intend and mean when they vote for these things. We put a lot of time and effort into this, but we do that because we want the most fair, equitable, and accurate kind of appraisal of what our readers have voted for in this process. We also go through and clean it up. There's certainly some attempts through this to manipulate some results and to achieve certain outcomes. But we make sure that we test, we check everything, we track IP addresses, et cetera, to see when votes have been pushed or somehow stuffed in the ballot, and we take a fair approach to those too. So it's a lot of work that goes into this. It's a difficult process to kind of parse all that data out from the reader survey, but we do it because it matters to do it the right way. On top of that, when we go through this and create our editorial approach to what's best, we pull from a lot of different sources. Joe, let's talk about some of that kind of the sources that we pull from when deciding our editors' picks for the top best 20 beers in 2021.
Well, the most important, obviously, is our blind panel reviews. When we have top scoring beers from our blind panel, those are immediately the strongest candidates to make this list at the end of the year. So that's the first thing we consider. I think then there's also, we probably get to travel on more than most people, just tasting beers in different parts of the country. So I take notes. I know you do too, studiously. We keep track. And then it's always interesting at the end of the year to look back and see what were my winners, and do any of these merit this conversation that we have with each other and with our colleagues. And then of course, then there's the best in beer tasting, which is sort of the last phase of this. And it's when we get together. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it there this year, but it's great this year that Stan Hieronymus and Kate Burnett could be there with you in Fort Collins and taste through some of these beers blindly, I should add. I think that's important, because sometimes it may be that there was a beer that I absolutely loved, and I would approach the brewery and say, hey, can you send this to them? Because I think they're going to love it. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But the point is that there is a really, everything is considered blindly in that process, so that we really, when it comes out, we're trying to eliminate as much bias as possible.
For sure. And I will tell you, if you haven't sat in a room and tasted beers with Stan and Kate for a few days straight and do nothing but taste and talk about beer, it's an experience that I highly recommend to everyone. I learned so much sitting in that room talking with the two of them. And, so anyway, through that process, we have come up with all these things. We're going to kick into this and go through some of the highlights from this Best in Beer issue through this episode so that you can kind of get a taste for it. We're not going to give it all to you. There's still plenty more in this issue, and there are plenty of reasons to go through. Make sure that you subscribe to the issue so that you can see it right now, get it via digital copy. This issue, if you are a current subscriber, will be out to you through the mail within probably the next week and a half or so. So it's coming quickly, but everyone should have gotten it on a link to the PDF of the digital issue on their email right at 9 o'clock when we made this podcast episode live, because we are just that dramatic about all of this, dropping it all at one time. Anyway, let's get started. Joe, what are our readers' choice for favorite breweries by size?
Well, let's start with the large ones. So we're talking more than 100,000 barrels a year. We'll start at there's the top 20. We're going to start at number 20. That's Anchor in San Francisco. We've got Victory in Pennsylvania. Yuengling, also in Pennsylvania. We got Southern Tier out of the state of New York. Cigar City out of Tampa, Florida at number 16. Number 15, Boulevard in Kansas City. Number 14, we got Lagunitas out of Petaluma, California. Number 13, Odell out of Fort Collins. Number 12, Great Lakes Brewing out of Cleveland. Trogs out of Hershey at number 11. And then kicking off the top 10, we've got Deschutes out of Bend, Oregon. Number 9, Samuel Adams, a.k.a. Boston Beer Company. Number 8, only in Wisconsin, New Glarus Brewing. Number 7, Dogfish Head in Delaware. And number 6, out of Escondido, California, Stone Brewing. Number 5, Firestone Walker, Paso Robles, California. Number 4, New Belgium out of Fort Collins. Number 3, Founders out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Also out of Michigan, we got Bell's Brewing at number 2. And your number 1 large brewery is Sierra Nevada out of Chico, California.
In mid-size regional breweries, that's 35,000 to 100,000 barrels a year. The number 20 spot, Pizza Port out of Carlsbad, California. Flying Dog out of Maryland. Brewdog out of Columbus, Ohio. Jack's Abbey out of Framingham, Massachusetts. Fatheads out of Ohio. St. Arnold from Houston. Left Hand out of Colorado. Highland out of Asheville. The number 12 spot, Rogue from Newport, Oregon. And the number 11 spot, Revolution Brewing out of Chicago. Number 10, Creature Comforts from Athens, Georgia. Number 9, Modern Times from San Diego. Number 8, New Holland out of Michigan with their famed Dragon's Milk. Number 7, Surly from Minnesota. Number 6, Fremont in Seattle. Quite the Pacific Northwest powerhouse. Number 5, Toppling Goliath from Decorah, Iowa, who's made a huge push to build a national footprint or semi-national lately. Number 4, Three Floyds out of Munster, Indiana. Number 3, Allagash from Portland, Maine. Number 2, Treehouse from Charlton, Massachusetts, a brewery that sells all of its production out of its own brewery. I shouldn't say that. I guess they do sell some out of the sports stadiums now in Massachusetts, because I've seen that you can get Julius at Patriots games now. Absolutely insane, but it's still an amazing feat to control all of that distribution themselves. In the number 1 spot for mid-sized regional breweries, a brewery that has stuck there and consistently been in this position since we started tracking these things, Russian River from Santa Rosa and Windsor, California.
All right, we're getting increasingly local now. We're going to small regional breweries. These are 15,000, 35,000 barrels per year as far as we know. And starting at number 20, maybe not a brewery, it's more of a brand, but you voted, we're going to count it. That's Untitled Art out of Wisconsin. Number 19, Great Divide out of Denver. 18, Bale Breaker out of Yakima, Washington. Number 17, KC Beer out of Kansas City in my home state of Missouri. Number 16, Parrish out of Louisiana. 15, The Brewery in California. Number 14, Urban Chestnut out of St. Louis, Missouri. Number 13, Distill in Illinois. Number 12, Prairie Artisan Ales out of Oklahoma. Ommegang out of Cooperstown. Number 10, we got Maine Beer out of Maine. Fort George out of Astoria, Oregon at number 9. We got Lawson's Finest out of Vermont at number 8. Breakside out of Portland, Oregon at number 7. Number 6, we got Reuben's Brews out of Seattle. Number 5, Half Acre in Chicago. And number 4, Freem out of Hood River, Oregon. Number 3, The Other Half out of Brooklyn. At number 2, The Alchemist out of Stowe, Vermont. And finally, at the top spot, small regional breweries, we got Trillium out of Canton, Massachusetts.
Congratulations to Trillium for topping that list. And now we move into small breweries. These are breweries under 15,000 barrels a year. You might wonder why we don't break it down below that, and that is because as you start getting really, small, when you get 5,000 and below, the number of votes that we get in an international survey like this just get really, really small. And so it becomes harder to really parse data out and find something that's statistically relevant below that. Having said that, number 20 on the small breweries list, Schilling, the lager brewer out of New Hampshire. Number 19, Great Notion out of Portland, Oregon. Number 18, Wolves and People out of Newburgh, Oregon. Number 17, Fair Isle from Seattle. Number 16, Monkish from Torrance, California. Number 15, Cantillon out of Brussels. Number 14, Hop Butcher for the World from Chicago. Number 13, Notch from Salem, Massachusetts. And I guess they also have a second location now. And number 12, another lager brewery, Dovetail out of Chicago. Number 11, Central Waters from Wisconsin. Number 10, Side Project out of Maplewood, Missouri. Number 9, Jester King from Austin, Texas. Number 8, Cloudburst out of Seattle. Number 7, Wayfinder from Portland, Oregon. Number 6, Holy Mountain out of Seattle. Number 5, Bierstadt Lagerhaus out of Denver, Colorado. Number 4, Highland Park Brewery out of Los Angeles, a strong LA contingent voting in the survey this year. Number 3, Weldworks from Greeley, Colorado. And there is no number 2 because the number 1 spot was a tie. And the brewery that has dominated this category since we started surveying for this kind of thing, Hill Farmstead, has tied this year with a brewery out of Asheville, North Carolina, Burial Brewing. And so there are 2 trophies for the number 1 spot in small brewery this year. Congratulations to both Hill Farmstead and to Burial. Let's swing into who brews it best. But before we do that, the world of craft beer is a different place now. Margins are more important than ever. So why not lower your ingredient cost? Craft juice concentrates from Old Orchard are a cost-effective solution for your fruit-forward needs. Old Orchard produces high volumes of their retail juice brand, so economies of scale keep prices low for their bulk supply program. A little concentrate goes a long way, and you won't lose some of it through filtering like you would with purees. To start increasing your margins now, head on over to www.oldorchard.com/brewer. Also, what if you could take your favorite recipe and make a non-alcoholic version without sacrificing the flavor, color, beer quality? And no problem, the Alchemator from ProBrew uses proprietary membrane technology to strip the alcohol from the beer without sacrificing all the elements like flavor and color that make the beer great. Are you ready to brew like a pro? The Alchemator from ProBrew. No problem. Email contact@probrew.com for more info. So let's talk about who brews it best. This is our survey by style of which brewery makes each style in the best possible way. Each of our lists in the reader survey go to 20. We're only going to share the top 10 from each of these because, hey, we are craven capitalists and have to give you a reason to go actually buy the magazine itself to see the full list. So if you find that your brewery is not mentioned here, clearly you must go subscribe to the magazine just to find out. Joe, start us off with favorite American IPA brewer, 10-1.
So at number 10, we've got Firestone Walker. Number 9, we got Founders. Number 8, Breakside. Number 7, Treehouse. At number 6, we have Dogfish Head. And for the top 5, we've got Lagunitas. Bell's at number 4. Stone at number 3. Sierra Nevada at number 2. And keeping the top spot this year for your favorite American IPA brewer is Russian River.
Excellent. West Coast IPA is not dead. On favorite hazy IPA brewers, let's start off with number 10, Old Nation out of Michigan. Number 9, Monkish out of California. Number 8, Hop Butcher. Number 7, on the strength of those Voodoo Ranger beers, New Belgium. Number 6, Trillium out of Massachusetts. Number 5, Other Half out of New York. Number 4, Weldworks out of Colorado. The Alchemist is number 3 on the strength of Heady Topper. Sierra Nevada's Hazy Little Thing, and that whole family has put them in the number 2 spot. And of course, once again in the number one spot is Treehouse out of Massachusetts.
So for favorite Saison brewer, we're going to kick off a couple of Belgian-ish categories. I find these fascinating, not just as a Belgophile, but we don't really specify in the survey.
As a Belgophile, you should say the author of multiple books on Belgian brewing.
I'm an enthusiast.
Sure.
We don't specify on the survey where your favorite breweries are from. We just say name your favorite breweries. So sometimes those international ones pop in there, and sometimes they don't. So, but with the Saison breweries, I think that's one of the places where that's interesting to see what happens. So, for the top 10 of your favorite Saison brewers, we've got Side Project out of Maplewood, Missouri at number 10, Wolves and People out of Oregon at number 9, Funkworks at number 8, Fair Isle out of Seattle at number 7, Austin's Jester Kings at number 6. And for the top 5 to start off, we got Ommegang at number 5, Allagash out of Maine at number 4, Hill Farmstead is at number 3, was 2 last year. Number 3 last year was Boulevard, now it's number 2. And your favorite Saison brewer is the Brasserie Dupont out of Torp, Belgium. Let's continue on into your favorite Abbey-style breweries, starting with number 10, The Lost Abbey out of California. Number 9, Duvel. Number 8, Rochefort. Number 7, West Vleteren. Number 6, Saint Bernardus. And number 5, out of Fort Collins, New Belgium Brewing. And number 4, Westmalle. And number 3 is Allagash. And then your number 2 favorite Abbey-style brewer is Ommegang. And then your top favorite Abbey-style brewer this year was number 4 last year. This year it's Chimay.
Chimay with a nice surge this year in the reader survey to take the number 1 spot. Congratulations to them. In terms of favorite sour or wild ale brewer, now number 10, Urban Artifact. At number 9, Side Project. Number 8, New Belgium. Number 7, Jolly Pumpkin. Number 6, Allagash. Moving up from 16 last year, quite a move. Number 5, Crooked Stave. Number 4, Cascade out of Portland, Oregon. The number 3 spot, Russian River. The number 2 spot, Jester King, just like they were last year. And then the number 1 spot, also repeating from 2020, Cantillon.
For your favorite stout or porter breweries, we've got at number 10, North Coast. New Holland is number 9. Treehouse is number 8. Number 7 is Fremont out of Seattle. Number 6, Deschutes out of Bend, Oregon. For number 5, Bell's Brewery. Number 4, Goose Island, up from 5 last year. At number 3, we have Left Hand, which was 4 last year. At number 2, Founders. And then keeping its top spot, your favorite stout brewery is Guinness.
Indeed, they are. Favorite pale ale brewer, number 10, Half Acre out of Chicago. Number 9, Maine Beer Company. Number 8, Firestone Walker. Number 7 is Hill Farmstead. Number 6 is Bell's. Number 5, Toppling Goliath. Number 4, Three Floyds. Number 3, Deschutes, making a leap up from the 12th spot last year. Number 2, Oscar Blues with the classic Dale's Pale Ale. And number 1, because it's not even close, I swear I think they had 4 times as many votes as the number 2 spot, Sierra Nevada. Of course, Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale being a classic in the world of craft beer. Congratulations to them once again. I suspect they will continue to win this award in perpetuity until the end of time. Talk to us about favorite lager brewers, Joe.
Your top 10 favorite lager breweries are starting at number 10. We have Eyinger out of Bavaria. At number 9, we have Chucknut, up from the 11th spot last year. Weihenstephaner is at number 8. That's up from 13. Wayfinder at number 7. Pilsner Urquell at number 6. We got Chicago's Dovetail at number 5. Your number 4 favorite lager brewery is Yuengling. Number 3 at Jack's Abbey, which had the top spot last year. Number 2, we have Samuel Adams. And then your favorite lager brewery this year was Bierstadt Lagerhaus out of Denver.
Bierstadt Lagerhaus. We have a shakeup in the number 1 there, too. Congratulations. Let's move into favorite beer cities. And this year, we decided to add an additional angle to the reader survey and split this up between U.S. cities and international cities. And first, let's talk about the top 10 for U.S. cities. In the number 10 spot, Fort Collins and Greeley, Colorado. Number 9, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Number 8, Grand Rapids / Kalamazoo, Michigan. Number 7, Seattle. Number 6, Chicago, Illinois. Number 5, Portland, Maine. Number 4, Portland, Oregon. The two Portlands, such a powerhouse year after year. In the number 3 spot, a former number 1, San Diego, California. It's kind of slipping a little. I find that interesting. In the number 2 spot is last year's number 1, Denver, Colorado. And in the number 1 spot for the first time, Asheville, North Carolina. Congratulations, Asheville, for peaking this year in our reader survey for best U.S. beer cities.
For your favorite international beer cities, and I find this list fascinating because you just don't know where people want to go or where they've been, but this gives us some kind of an indication. Your top 10 for international cities. At number 10, Berlin, Germany. At number 9, Copenhagen, Denmark. 8, Bruges, Belgium. At number 7, Bamberg, Germany. Number 6, Cologne, Germany at number 6. Number 5, we have Prague and the Czech Republic. Number 4, Dublin, Ireland. At 3, we have London, England. At number 2, Brussels, Belgium, my personal favorite. And then this is fascinating to me. I don't know if it's the lure of Helles or the lure of Oktoberfest or whatever, but it is a great city to visit. Number 1 favorite international city is Munich, Germany.
Congratulations, Munich, Germany, on taking our very first Reader's Survey trophy for Best International Beer City. Let's talk about best beer bars around the world. This was a really difficult year for this category. A sad one because we experienced the loss of the previous winner who had held this title for multiple years running and has had those trophies up on their mantle above the tap list. Falling Rock Tap House is no more. Rest in peace. Their departure from the world of the publican world has left an opening that is difficult for others to fill. But we can talk about the top 10 there. A number 10 spot, Tap and Handle from Fort Collins, Colorado, a bar that we Craft Beer and Brewing once owned, haven't owned for the last 5 years, but we did at one point own that, and we're very excited and congratulate them. Number 9, World of Beer, various locations. Number 8, Yard House, various locations. Those chains, they did all right. Number 7, Novare Reds out of Portland, Maine, a beautiful, fantastic beer bar. Number 6, Toronado out of California, a couple of locations for Toronado there. Number 5, the various locations of Flying Saucer. Still impressive that some of the smaller and indie beer bars can hold their own against some of these bigger chains. Number 4, Armsby Abbey out of Worcester, Massachusetts. Number 3, Hopcat in various locations. In the number 2 spot out of Washington, D.C., Church Key, obviously. And in the number 1 spot, a timeless classic beer bar, Philadelphia's own Monk's Cafe. We're going to pop into Reader's Choice for Top 50 next, but first, this episode is brought to you by Mountain Rose Herbs, purveyors of the highest quality organic herbs, spices, and teas. Whether you want to add depth to your next golden triple with classic notes of cinnamon, pepper, and clover, artfully layer exotic, zesty grains of paradise into a perfect ale, adding botanicals to your brewing is an easy way to customize a delicious flavor profile. Mountain Rose Herbs has been providing organic herbs and spices to chefs, herbalists, and dedicated brewers for more than 3 decades. Learn more at mountainroseherbs.com and get 10% off any and all orders with the code CRAFTBEER10. You know, my first experience with Mountain Rose Herbs was my wife. She actually ordered from them. She had an idea that she was going to make organic root beer, and she ordered the spice kit from them, and the quality of the materials was great. I wouldn't say that the root beer was a particular success, but it's exciting to see Mountain Rose Herbs joining our list of sponsors. As a brewery owner, you know how important it is to keep your machines running so you don't have to deal with the hassle caused by contamination, recalls, and downtime Clarion makes food-grade lubricants to protect your equipment from the wear and tear that results in breakdowns that cut into your bottom line. Clarion gives you peace of mind so you can focus on what you do best, pouring out great-tasting beverages. Learn more at clarionlubricants.com. All right, let's talk about Reader's Choice for top 50 beers of 2021. You know, this is a long list. I don't think we need to do all 50. What if we kick in at number 25 and then count up from that and then make everybody else just read the magazine to get, from there. Joe, kick us off with number 25 and we'll take them by fives.
Sounds good. All right, so at number 25, we've got Zombie Dust Pale Ale from Three Floyds. At 24, we have Lawson's Finest Sip of Sunshine IPA. At 23, we have Boulevard Tank 7 Farmhouse Ale. At number 22, we have Samuel Adams Oktoberfest. And your number 21 favorite beer is Lagunitas IPA, jumping into the list from nowhere this year.
That's surprising that they came out of nowhere on that. And number 20, Goose Island's Bourbon County Brand Stout. Number 19, Treehouse Julius IPA. Number 18, New Holland Dragon's Milk. Number 17, The Alchemist's Heady Topper. Number 16 is Sierra Nevada Torpedo.
So we heard y'all like Sierra Nevada. At number 15, we got...
You could say that.
Number 15, we got Sierra Nevada Celebration. At 14, we have Saison du Pont. At 13, we have Pilsner Urquell. At number 12, we have Allagash White. And at number 11, we have Founders Kentucky Breakfast Stout.
The number 10 spot, Stone IPA. And the number 9 spot, Founders All Day IPA. And the number 8 spot, Yingling Traditional Lager. Number 7, Voodoo Ranger from New Belgium. Number 6, Hazy Little Thing from Sierra Nevada. I'm not sure how you end up at number 6 on a top 50 list that doesn't change that much with a beer that's, 3 years old now. But kudos to Sierra Nevada for pulling that off.
At number 5, Samuel Adams Boston Lager. It's kind of cool to see that one enduring, It's the airport beer par excellence, isn't it? Number 4, sure. Guinness Extra Stout. At number 4, at number 3, we have Russian River Pliny the Elder Imperial IPA. At number 2, Bell's Brewery Two Hearted IPA, and still in the top spot with you this year, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
It's interesting as that top 4 has not changed since last year, that as much as the world changes, some things stay the same. Now let's shift gears. That has been our readers survey portion of the best in beer. Let's flip over and talk about our editors' picks for the top 20 beers of the year. Now, as Joe said when we were talking at the top of the podcast, there's multiple methods for us to determine this. Primarily, it's determined by scores from our blind panel. If you are a brewery out there and you are making beer and you want to be considered for this, please check out our help center of beerandbrewing.com on how to get your beer reviewed in Craft Beer and Brewing magazine. The editorial calendar is there of what beers we're reviewing, when we're reviewing them, what those deadlines are, et cetera, et cetera. Send us beer for those. Follow the directions. They're all right there on the website. And we would love to consider that. We do not gatekeep our list. We allow every brewery that is a commercially operating brewery out there to submit beer for us to review. Discovering new standouts is a big part of what we do, and we love to explore and celebrate those folks that come out and surprise us with high quality beer. There are a number of those breweries that are on our top 20 beers this year, breweries that may not be big names, but they have impressed us, and they've done it consistently through high scoring beers. That's the biggest way. Then there's this other means, which is submitting beers specifically for the Best in Beer issue. As Joe also mentioned, we got together and judged between Kate Bernat, Stan Hieronymus, and me. Then as we wrapped up, we looped in Joe via remotely after a few days of tasting, all kind of spent some time discussing the merits, pros, and cons of each of these beers to kind of determine this list. At times we nominated some beers straight in and tasted them collectively to kind of determine whether these were going to be on the list. And so that's how it happens. Most of this list, again, has been scored blindly. All of their tasting with Kate and with Stan for our Best in Beer issue is done blindly because that's the only fair way to kind of approach this thing. We focus on style diversity. We focus on some geographical diversity. We focus on beers that captured zeitgeist in some reason or some way or another. And that becomes the thing that determines this list. The first beer that we're going to talk about, Joe, it's a cold IPA.
It is a cold IPA. This is the second year in a row we've got a cold IPA on our top 20 list. And I love the. Are you opening a cold IPA right now?
I might be drinking one of these right now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. So cold IPA, why does it work? Why is it everywhere now? It seemed like last year there was only one that was Wayfinders, and now they're everywhere.
Which was a beer of the year for craft beer and brewing before it became a thing on the internet, people. Okay? I'm not saying that we're on top of this. Well, I am saying that, but yeah.
Yeah, we're on top of this.
You heard it from us first.
Yeah. Well, Kevin Davey, the brewmaster at Wayfinder, who gets to define it, by the way, the way the explanation I like best is Wester than West Coast, and I think that appeals to people right now for a whole bunch of reasons. One is that craft brewers and drinkers are increasingly embracing lager, which is cool. IPA is enduringly popular, obviously. And then what has happened to IPA in recent years is it's moved toward, the sort of the hazy, softer, sweeter, juicier iterations, which are lots of fun, but we're leaving something behind there. And there's a lot of room in that flavor territory, that crisp, bitter territory to sort of go back and do things. And I think that's what part of what cold IPA is doing, is going back there. So take that brilliant idea. And I think Kevin Davey, by the way, at Wayfinder, would have been excellent at marketing if he hadn't been an excellent brewer, but let's move on. Green Cheek, another.
He's right.
Yeah.
Cold IPA is a way better term than IPL. So let's just put IPL to bed, please. Cold IPA will sell more beer. It is way better for everybody.
Are cold IPAs and IPLs the same thing, though? Now, there's a discussion that we can't have right now. In the capable hands of Green Cheek out of Orange, California, take this brilliant idea and give it to some of the most accomplished award-winning IPA brewers in the country. And what you end up with is a beer that scores 100 points with our blind review panel. It is a physically attractive beer. It's beautiful, golden, great foam on there. The nose hits you in all the ways that IPAs used to hit you, but maybe cranked up a couple of notches with the pine and the grapefruit. The body is light. It is, and I don't like this word. I don't like to throw it around, but this is a crisp beer. It drinks easily. It is integrated beautifully, and it just hits everything just right. And that's why it's here in our list of top 20 beers of 2021. That's Green Cheek. It just works. And it does.
And it does. It does indeed. The second beer on our editor's picks for best beer in 2020, this one was an outlier. This one, normally when we pick beers for our editor's picks, we choose from styles that we don't focus issues on. Now it's, in this kind of case, if we have something like a barrel-aged imperial stout, we do an entire issue on stouts. We judge stouts. For a beer to get onto this list that did not get rated in that stout issue, it's almost impossible. It's very, very, very difficult. And in fact, this beer would not have been on our editor's picks for the top 20 beers of 2020 had, after tasting it, Stan Hieronymus not stood up in the room with Kate and me and threatened to never write for the magazine again if we did not put this beer on as an editor's pick for 2020. Which is super weird because this is a very sweet dessert stout. It is Weldworks Starry Noche. It is unabashedly sweet. It is sweet in a beautifully balanced kind of way, nuanced, layered, caramel layers, nut layers, a bit of roast layer. There's a decent amount of bitterness there. And yes, it is very, very sweet, but there are flavor strata there that support this kind of intense sweetness, and it feels real. It doesn't have that kind of saccharine sweetness that can kind of define this style. And it has an earthiness and a kind of toothy element to it. And so, this was not on any of our radars for a best beer of 2021. And yet it was Stan, the guy who wrote the book on hops, who absolutely insisted that this beer had to be on our list, that it was so impactful and so interesting and compelling for him that he was going to demand that this be in there. And so there it is, WeldWerks Starry Noche, as determined by Stan Hieronymus.
I think his words when he was threatening to die on this hill were, I don't know myself anymore.
What it goes to show is that all of us are much more complex beer drinkers than any of us would like to admit. The next beer that we're going to talk about is Triple Crossing One and the Same. This was another one that came from our Best in Beer tasting. That was one of those that was determined as Kate and Stan and I were tasting through these. It was a beer that hopefully has been released by the time that this podcast airs. I know it is on the schedule for a 2021 release, and so we've kept it on this list, but it was not publicly available when we started tasting it. But beautiful, beautiful mixed culture Saison. Watching the development of mixed culture farmhouse beers and Saison has been absolutely fascinating over the last 7 or 8 years. We've moved from heavily bready to very overtly acidic, maybe too intensely acidic. And now we're watching this pullback in the farmhouse and mixed culture realm as brewers dial that back in. They rediscover hops. They start thinking about or building this broader concept of nuance that balances everything from wood tannin or barrel influence from wine barrel aging, along with that kind of hop influence and this kind of mixed culture, impact with just a light touch of acidity to build this kind of a compelling thing. And from what we tasted, Triple Crossings One and the Same really captured that excitement, that energy. It had that vibrance, and yet it also had a certain sophistication. It was exciting, and yet it never pushed too far. It pushed right up to that level of, that edge of flavor while still, pulling back right when, there was any chance of it flying over an edge. There was not a tannin that was out of place. The wine character was in beautiful, the wine barrel character was in beautiful balance with, the kind of subtle culture impact and elements from the fermentation. And watching all of that kind of play in concert was a beautiful experience. I have another bottle of this and I can't wait to dive into it. And I'm not going to share it with anybody because it was just that good. What's up next on our list, Joe?
So up next, we have a beer from Breakside out of Portland, Oregon. And I think we have to come out and say at the outset here that there was actually a higher scoring Breakside beer with our panel this year, and that was the Wanderlust IPA. Fantastic West Coast IPA. And in the end, we still get to choose, hang on, we like this other thing just a bit better. This beer still also scored very well. It scored a 96 with the panel. But this is just a really interesting beer for us.
Wouldn't it be boring if the whole list was all IPAs? I mean, it would be kind of boring there. And not to take a single thing away from Breakside because they are absolute geniuses. Absolute geniuses.
And it's a fantastic beer. This is True Gold. It is a golden ale. It's a hoppy golden ale, which is probably a place where, as brewers, we have a lot more room to play and see what we can do and push things. But this one takes that modern twist with Mosaic and Galaxy. I think the words you used here, Jamie, are IPA light, and I think that's maybe that's a good way to describe it. A good way to sort of just give drinkers an idea what they may be getting into. I just love to see something that could be packaged as IPA, packaged as golden ale. It's packaged in this classic way. It's sold in this classic way as a classic style. And this was a beer that was reviewed for our Craft Classics issue this year. I don't know if that's just a power of nostalgia thing or wanting to see some of these more underappreciated styles get the love they deserve. But this was a beer that earned it with its flavor, with its character, with its appearance, with everything. It's just a beautiful beer. Love to see more of this kind of thing happen in the beer world.
For sure. No, and I think you're right. We do want to see more of these underappreciated or so-called forgotten styles. I shouldn't say they're not forgotten. There's still plenty of drinkers for these beers. But to construct a Mosaic Galaxy beer that is so subtle and constrained and simple, but also direct in its hopping. I mean, it's just beautiful. The fact that this beer rates a 3.63 on Untapped also makes it feel all the better to name it a beer of the year for craft beer and brewing. Next up on our list is a very hoppy lager, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you were dissing IPL earlier, but this is an India Pale Lager. I love India Pale Lager. When I see one,
there's no such thing as India Pale Lager.
I don't.
It's the name is a construction.
Again,
I mean, it's all the style is just marketing.
I don't care what you call it. That's the thing. Like we don't care
just
what you call it.
IPA.
You call it cold IPA. Call it hoppy lager. We don't care. But this is a place where
hoppy lager. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when brewers are playing in this zone, and I love to drink beers that come out of this zone of lager influence plus lots of hops, and then let's see where you take it. I think we're well past the days when we had these, sort of thick, kind of resinous IPAs that just happened to be fermented with lager yeast and kept cold for a few days longer. We're in this zone now where maybe I don't know if it's brewers who have been appreciating lager more and how to brew them, but we're getting these lighter, more delicate creations and more drinkable too. And in some cases, like with this one, we're talking 7-ish% ABV with Static God, so this is going to sneak up on you. The character got a lot of the things that we love about modern IPAs. It's got that tropical guava, pomelo, pineapple stuff going on, but it's not a tiki drink. You get those whiffs of diesel and pine there too that kind of grounds it. But if it were an IPA, it would still be on the list because it's that good. It's easy to drink. This interesting pillowy mouthfeel to it. It's full of character. It's easy to drink. It's dangerous. It got there by a different road than some other beers get there, but it got to a place that we're happy it arrived to and happy to drink more of it.
Absolutely beautiful. The next beer on our list is Wild Provisions out of Boulder, Colorado. Meats and Bounds Red Globe Peach. Now, Wild Provisions is a second brand from the folks of Four Noses, and this beer project was brought into play by their then head brewer, who's actually still head brewer right now and is just going to transition out of that, Brandon Bolt, who's also involved with Primitive Brewing. This beer was one that he designed, and it's Wild Provisions Meats and Bounds Red Globe Peach. This one spawned an interesting philosophical discussion amongst Kate and Stan and me. And this is where our conversations would devolve into as we were discussing some of these things. But Stan brought up an interesting point. There are other languages other than English and other cultures that have terms, words that describe flavors that might be in common between things. English does not have that. Like, what does a peach taste like? It tastes like a peach. We associate color and the thing with the things. An orange is a color orange and it tastes like an orange. You can't say that it tastes like another thing. We don't have a language for that. And so in terms of using English to describe these things, there's a particular constriction, and a particular kind of economy that we have to employ as we are writing and talking about these kinds of things. It does make it challenging because all of our knowledge, and the way that we create ideas of what these things are related to other things. And so, in describing this, you might be able to describe it as peach pit and funk, as Stan did. You might be able to describe it as a mix of dandelion, honey, and green grape, as Kate did. But most of it, we just come across as peach. Finding the character that takes a peach, acidic forward kind of sour wild beer and makes it something special. That's the interesting piece here. What elevates this beer to it? And some of that is the kind of softness to it. Some of it was this kind of pillowy character. Some of it was this just soft peach juice and low, but also present acidity. That felt controlled and that felt like it accentuated the fruit character without dominating the experience of the beer. A light little minerality, and a bit of baked bread, coming out of that fermentation character gave it some interesting character that was really, really compelling for us. And so, Wild Provisions Meats and Bounds Red Globe Peach is one of our favorite wild ales in our best in 2021. Next up on the list is Oxbow Crossfade. This was a Brett-focused beer, a farmhouse or saison ale that is not necessarily a mixed culture beer in that it is really, I guess it's a Sack and Brett beer first and foremost, which technically, I guess, makes it a mixed culture beer. But there is not a lacto, component to it. There's not a PDO component. It is not a long-term, quote unquote, sour saison or farmhouse ale. But what it did for us was remind us of this era of Brett beer brewing that we seem to have moved past, because for whatever reason, the market seems to embrace longer aged, wood aged, wine barrel aged, mixed culture sour sour acidic saisons and farmhouse ales over this kind of generation of Brett Bruck's forward kind of punchy white linen, peppery, saison. And this beer is one that Oxbow has made for a long time. They continue to make it. It continues to be a compelling beer. And what we found is that this type of beer is something that more and more people should consider in that same kind of canon of beer to consume with food, that it is clean. It is, dare I say it, crisp. It holds its own with a character without overshadowing the things that are around it. It instead kind of adds a punchy accentuation to those things. And I think that there's a space for more of these beers, and we would love to see more of them in the world of beer if they can be made as well as Oxbow makes Crossfade. Next up on our list, Joe, Postcard Pills from Green Bench.
Yeah, this is a fun beer. So as a beer consumer, and I love to buy beer, no matter how much people send to the magazine or anywhere. When I see American style Pilsner, I have almost no idea what to think. So maybe it's going to be a kind of prohibition-ish, Budweiser-ish thing. Maybe it's going to be a Pilsner body with lots of American hops in it. I'm never quite sure what to expect. I think from now on we should just agree Postcard Pills is the prototype for American style Pilsner, and then we'll be on the same page. This is a unique beer, although it takes some things from the sort of pre-prohibition type book, as far as it's got corn in the mash. They do a cereal mash. The hops are old school American hops. They're using Mount Hood hops. It's also cranked up to 35 IBUs. So this is not the bitterness here is an important piece of it. It's got other important pieces that are interesting. They ferment it just a bit warmer than usual. So you get this sort of these very subtle tropical esters there that Chris Johnson, the head brewer, in his mind, they allude to the tropical environment down there in Florida. And make it a beer for its place. And we have more on the brewing of this beer in this issue of the magazine. But I love the story about how they came around to embracing decoction. As you know, Jamie, I am a decoction enthusiast.
I tell people this all the time. Every guest who comes onto the Craft Beer and Brewing podcast who decides to talk about decoction, they are your new best friend.
Yeah. Well, so they had this beer, they had Postcard Pills completely dialed in. Like, it was already great. And then Chris decided, hey, let's try it with decoction, which is slightly crazy to change it up after they had already had a successful beer with it. And at first it wasn't as good, which is interesting in itself, but they stuck with it for weeks and months. And eventually it got better than the original in their minds. So we have a decocted American style Pilsner, Postcard Pills, beautiful balance to it. I love that bitter bite in a beer like this. I want bitterness. I love bitterness in a Pilsner. I think it needs to be there. And this is sort of uniquely American as well. So although it's got plenty of German influence and some German ingredients in there too, this is an American beer, Postcard Pils. Check it out. One of our top 20 beers of the year.
An extensive brewer's perspective from Chris Johnson, brewer for Green Bench, and also a homebrew recipe for those of you who want to try your hand at brewing it at home. Only in Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. Next up on our list, Vitamin C's Tropical Envy, a collaboration with Civil Society Brewing. This one is a triple IPA, and I keep saying it enough times that you'd think that I would revisit this, but I always say, "Oh no, I don't like triple IPAs. There's too much alcohol in them." And then I seem to drink a lot of them. Seem to really enjoy drinking a lot of them. Because I think there is something about this kind of nexus. I mean, for one, if you give me a hazy IPA, and I would rather drink a hazy double IPA than a hazy single IPA or a hazy pale ale. There is just something about that hop expression that starts happening at that, heftier level, and with that kind of, alcohol helping it along, that is just, more interesting to me. And so that alcohol, that kind of hop intensity, that kind of saturation, that kind of extraction, and what all of those pieces, what the additional residual sweetness that can be supported by the additional bitterness and all of that additional heightened flavor at that kind of ABV level, somehow I feel works to support this kind of beer. And so as much as I might say, well, I don't like those high ABV beers, I mean, I will drink some other half all green everything and some, monkish triple IPAs and you name it. I somehow I find myself going back to those, even though I might, for my brewer cred, want to say, oh, I just really like Pilsners, this is my dirty little secret. I'm just bearing my soul for everybody now. The triple IPAs and those bigger double IPAs, totally my jam. Vitamin C's Tropical Envy hits all of those notes. This one rated a 97 by our blind panel this year, was the top rated triple IPA. Vitamin C, a great crew of folks out there on, from Weymouth, Massachusetts, kind of coming up from the roots. Such a cool story. They started as home brewers. They would brew and they would package and they'd put their beer out in a cooler in the front yard, and their friends would come by and they would take some of the home brew and they'd leave some beer for them. And that's how the brewery got started. Just such a beautiful grassroots piece about that. They haven't lost sight of where they've come from. They've stayed community focused, but they've also stayed really focused on this kind of intensity and this interest. And this Tropical Envy beer collaboration with Jupiter, Florida's Civil Societies, another great crew. You can read about them in Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. I know we've got a recipe for a fresh IPA from them, as well as a breakout brewer story. Really great folks. This is kind of this fun, big nexus of crazy, intense, contemporary hop flavor. Citra, Galaxy, Mosaic, Brew One, just big, unabashed, unapologetic flavor intensity. And I love these kinds of beers that just capture all that's good and all that's possible with hops themselves. A fantastic beer and more than deserving to be a beer of the year for us. Next up on the list, Maplewood Barrel-Aged Cup of Vanilla Rye. Moving back into the barrel-aged territory, this one rated 100 by the blind judging panel for Craft Beer and Brewing. And it's an interesting thing. It's not the thickest of the beers out there. It's not the the most syrupy or the most intense in terms of any of the individual flavors. But one of the things I absolutely love about our blind tasting panel, and these are all BJCP judges and, experienced judges that kind of cross the spectrum of age and, homebrewing experience and interest. But what we find is that things like sophistication and quality rise through it. The hype does not figure into this. What matters to our judges, honestly, is this intangible idea of quality. And in a beer like this with maybe, barrel-aged cup of vanilla rye, there is this je ne sais quoi, this piece of integration that feels so seamless, that feels so pulled together, that feels so tightly integrated, where all of those flavors and all of those pieces work so well to, kind of express this flavor, that the beer earned its way into that 100 rating. It is a tough thing for a brewery in Chicago to come out and make a vanilla rye beer, because Goose Island, it is arguable that Goose Island has done it the best. That it is like, if you're going to go do this, if you're going to come at it, they've made two iconic beers in this kind of realm, in the vanilla rye realm. And so if you're going to do it, it's got to be really good. Otherwise, why even try? And Maplewood did exactly that. They are not the most hyped of barrel-aged brewers in the Chicagoland area, but they are among the best.
Well, let's stay in Illinois, Jamie. Let's go to Lake Zurich.
Let's stay there, sure.
Let's go to suburban Chicago for Lake Zurich, Illinois. And one of our favorite beers of the year, and our panel loved it too. That's Tuba Solo from Roaring Table. This is a hazy IPA, and it's from a brewery that I think we're all going to be hearing more from in the years to come.
You will hear more from them if you read this Best in Beer issue of Craft Beer and Brewing, which includes a breakout brewer story on Roaring Table, as well as a recipe to make your own homebrew version of the same beer.
There you go. It's an instantly self-fulfilling prophecy. We're going to hear more from Roaring Table, like today. So Tuba Solo is it's a hazy IPA, and as you may be aware, because you're interested in beer, there are a lot of hazy IPAs out there these days. It doesn't matter how.
What? No,
yeah, there really are, and it doesn't matter how many there are. It remains a difficult style to brew well. There's different parts to it with the ingredients, the supremacy of the freshness of hops to really make a great one. The water profile is so important. There's just a lot of moving parts to a great hazy IPA. And this is just one that we loved. It just hit all the numbers. You're getting this big beachy tiki cocktail mix of pineapple, orange, mango, guava, with the floral lay there getting laid on your neck as you arrive on the island. It's bursting, it's juicy, and this is something that I look for in a great one. It doesn't cloy. Yeah, it's sweet because it's a hazy IPA, but it doesn't. It is just restrained enough that you want to keep drinking it. Very smooth, fluffy, soft, very enjoyable. The kind where it arrives on your table and you think, I'm only going to want one of those, and you finish it and you're like, I'm going to need another one of those. That's Roaring Table Tuba Solo. Beautiful hazy IPA, one of our favorite 20 beers of 2021.
They just sent me a 4-pack. I'm drinking one of them right now. And yes, I could very easily drink the entire 4-pack in one sitting. I'm not going to do that because I need to be coherent as we continue to talk through the rest of this episode. But the next beer, well, I can't even really call it a beer, Joe.
It's not a beer. It's not a beer.
And yet here it is. The next fermented beverage on our list, because yes, we are going to trigger you hardcore brewers just like that. The next one on our list is Smooge Strawberry Banana. It is a fruited hard seltzer. Why? Why is Smooge on our list? It's pretty simple. As we were reviewing kettle sours earlier this year, just for fun, because I love to fuck with our blind panel like this, but just for fun, I threw in some Smooge on a couple of different panels, some pineapple Smooge, and then some strawberry banana Smooge, and didn't tell him what it was, but we had already had some other other similar beverages. And so it didn't feel, in the realm of smoothie sours, they didn't feel that much different than those beers. And even when blind reviewing, and these are reviews that we've never published in the magazine, but I just kind of held them in our back pocket because I was curious to see how these things would score. The Smooges scored 96s and 97s with our blind panel out of nowhere. And why is that? Because they are delicious. They are just undeniably delicious. And having said that, we have tasted lots and lots and lots and lots, like more smoothie and fruited seltzers than I care to admit, just because, this is what we do for science. Like, we approach these things thinking about them as beverages. We think about them as flavor. We approach them blindly. We taste and review these things. These are the best of the best. Smooge is a category defining product. It is better and more compelling than everything else out there that we have tasted in a similar category. And, hands down, when a box from Smooge arrives in our office, we're all jaded on beer. We get a lot of beer. We taste a lot of beer. Even our customer service team, I have to convince them to take more beer home, and I just put it on their desks. We have extra beer. Just take this home and try this, because people don't opt into a lot of beer anymore. Everyone's fridges are full. But when Smooge arrives in the office, there's like a certain energy that just happens where, oh, Smooge is here. Hey, are you going to open that Smooge? Hey, we should try some of the Smooge. Like, it is so interesting and so funny to see it happen where Smooge itself creates a separate energy even here, and an excitement. And looking at it from that sense, we just can't deny it. It's a beer. It's one of our beers of the year. It's one of I really enjoy drinking this. Again, going to lose all credibility by saying this, but that fruited smoothie hard seltzer is a fantastic thing to drink. And in this entire category of beverage is one that craft brewers should embrace. Craft brewers should not run from. We shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We should celebrate the fact that it is craft brewers, and in this case, it's the brewers from Holmes Brewery in Michigan that developed Smooge. It is craft brewers that have delivered on this kind of innovation, and let's keep this category of beverage in the world of craft beer so that people that cannot consume gluten, people that may not find themselves a home with beer itself, have a craft beverage and a place to connect with the world of craft beer through beverages like these. I love Smooge. That is one of our best in 2021. What's next, Joe?
Well, let's go completely the other direction here. We're going to go with a Pilsner. Yeah, the industry Pilsner from the Austin Beer Garden Brewery. This is a cool one for us because we had an experience with this beer some weeks before it went in front of our blind panel and scored a 100, which is not a huge surprise for a sort of a well-established beer like this. This is a beer that did win a gold medal at the Great American Beer Festival 5 years ago. It is a known great, the industry Pilsner. And we were there at the Austin Beer Garden Brewery in the beer garden, enjoying this beer and a couple of others, but this was the one I got stuck into. Thought we weren't going to stay long because it was cold outside. This was right before the ice storm where I got stuck in Austin for 5 days longer than I intended.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful story. We were in Austin to film classes for our All Access program, video classes on brewing. Those of you who are subscribers may have seen some of those classes. There are a few more in the tank that you will continue to see. But yeah, Joe, you ended up hanging around Austin for an extra 5 days in the middle of an epic ice and snowstorm that shut the entire state down. Yeah,
I think I'm going to tell a bit more of that story next week in our critics picks.
Okay, fair enough.
But for now, it's enough to know that it was cold out. And we weren't going to stay
long.
But
it was nice enough for us to sit outside. It was COVID time, so we wanted to be outside. Right?
We were happy to be outside because it was COVID times, yeah. And but it was a little chilly to just kind of sit out and drink the beer. But we got stuck into an industry Pilsner anyway, and it was fantastic. We ate some pizza. We had some leftover Franklin's barbecue.
Oof,
it was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those moments. And then it goes in front of the blind panel, and they take this beer and give it 100. We're like, yeah. We know. We already knew.
Yeah.
I like many of you. I have a thing for Pilsner. I love Pilsner, and I like it when a Pilsner is hoppy and bitter. I don't I also appreciate your delicate constructions also, but I like it when you kick it up there. This is 40 IBUs, the industry pilsner. It's bitter and you can taste it. And at the same time, it doesn't really hold back on the hop flavor either. It embraces that leafy Hallertauer. You get this beautiful herbal, and to me, a little bit of almost a lemoniness that can come out when that hop isn't really singing. And so it's you can sit there and you can pick it apart and appreciate this ample character, or you can just sit there and drink it and enjoy it and have great conversation. And this is, one of those beers that can do that stand up to scrutiny or just there to be enjoyed. Yeah, we love it. And here it is in our best 20 of 2021.
And beautiful proof that technique at the hands of talented brewers is more important than dogma. They violate dogma left and right, compared to what some people say they must do. And yet they consistently make compelling beers. It is less about dogma and more about building an approach to brewing that works with your brew house and your yeast and your fermentation cellar and all of those pieces. And in the hands of a talented brewer, understanding how all of those things work together to create the beer is what ultimately results in something so compelling. And so, but I just love that idea that you can make beautiful beers in a lot of different ways if you understand all of the pieces that are going into how they're being made and what those things do to impact those beers.
Yeah, well said.
It's not decocted, Joe.
Yeah. No, it's not decocted. There's plenty of breweries that will get there the Reverend Czech way or the Reverend Bavarian way, and this beer gets there the Austin Beer Garden way, and you got to respect that. We talk a lot about how different beers can be evocative. And I think particularly these days with dessert stouts and these dessert like fruit beers, they are quite literally evocative of particular treats and things that we enjoy. But other kinds of beers can do this too. Classic beers can do this. And so for the next beer, this is from Cross Strain out of La Vista, Nebraska. The beer is batch 625, and it is a beautiful saison. And for me, it evokes things. It brings me back to Wallonia. I'm sitting in a cafe and maybe I'm about to tuck into some pate or a pork knuckle with mustard sauce all over, something like that. The construction is sort of classically DuPont-ish. It's delicate. It's very well attenuated. The bitterness is just right. I don't know what they are. Oh, I guess I do know what they are because we have a recipe in this issue.
Indeed, we do.
Yeah. Bobby Cross from Crosswave worked with us on a homebrew scale recipe, and it's a lovely one for all you my fellow saison homebrewers out there. It's a really cool recipe. This one does have Brettanomyces. The first time I drank this beer, I wasn't fully aware of that, and it didn't matter. It was subtle. I suspect with age that was going to come out more, but the point is it all comes together beautifully. The Brett brings this brighter lemony notes along with that sort of cellar floor earthiness. It hits all of these sort of classic notes that are herbal and spicy and fun to pick apart. You got the pepper, chamomile, lemongrass could be there. It's a little bit crackery, a little bit of stone fruit notes, and there's just you could taste it yourself and come up with 10 of your own descriptors and be no less right or wrong. It's all in the eye of the beholder, and so I love these kind of beers, and this is a common thread through some of the ones that we've got in our list. We've mentioned a couple of them already. These mixed fermentation, farmhouse, saison type beers that seem to be getting, at least the ones that we love, are getting lighter in character, more balanced, more restrained and delicate. And when you can combine that incredible complexity with that great drinkability, I have to hope then maybe they'll start selling more. Like, please make more of these beers because we love to drink them, and we just hope you can have success with them as brewers.
We will keep singing their praises in hopes that you as brewers continue to have more success with them, and then more people start to see the beauty and the wisdom in this approach. Next on our list is a beer from Cloudburst Brewing in Seattle, Washington. It's Aqua Seafoam Shame. This is a fresh hop beer, interestingly enough. Might be one of the first fresh hop beers that have ever appeared on our list of our editor's picks for best beers. But Cloudburst appeared on this list in an interesting kind of fashion. It was one of those when, as we were comparing our own individual critic shortlists, Cloudburst was on 4 different individuals' lists, different beers, all 4 different beers. And so we started to recognize, like, wait, there must be something here when all of us were finding some of those beers from Cloudburst to be individually compelling. And so we reached out, and Steve Luke, the founder of Cloudburst, sent out a bunch of beer to all of our judges, and we sat through and tasted a bunch of these beers to see if we might be able to find a beer that we all agreed on. And this was the beer that everybody agreed on. Such a beautiful, weird, odd, quirky beer. We're used to that kind of vegetal green character that comes out of fresh hop beers. We all know that, part of, like, that's one of the pieces that we all celebrate about that. But this one was like curiously almost melony. It just had this, Kate described it as eucalyptus, spruce, mint, green split wood, and lemongrass. But even when we talk about those kinds of descriptors, that sounds more intense than it tastes. Those are the elements, but it had this kind of soft sheen to it that pulled all of those disparate elements together in this beautiful, kind of cohesive way. And it was such an interesting beer in that regard to kind of experience fresh hop in a way that captured that beautiful green vegetal character of it, but also with these contemporary hops notes. It was a beautiful expression. We expected nothing less from Steve Luke and Cloudburst because they're absolute geniuses when it comes to using hops. And so it's exciting to be able to include this one in our best beers in 2021. Next on the list, we go a whole different direction with a barrel-aged blended strong ale, a blend of barley wine and barrel-aged stout. It's Westbound and Down's 5 Years Strong. And this one is an anniversary beer where they blended it from Imperial stout stock as well as barrel-aged barley wine stock. This is a movement in beer that I absolutely love. Our judges love. All of us are fully behind this kind of movement. We all love barley wines. We all love barrel-aged stouts separately. And this idea of building beers that are blended between these two things that confuse those categories, but pull on some of the better elements and the more compelling pieces of both to create beers that are neither of those things, but also the sum of both of those parts is absolutely fantastic. Such a beautiful, interesting thing over the last 2 years to watch this happen. Obviously, breweries like Side Project, Anchorage, and others have been pushing on this realm and building these kinds of beers that span these categories by blending these varying barrel-aged stocks. But this one, Westbound and Down, their bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout was, I think it was a 99 in our barrel-aged stouts in our stout issue. Certainly, individually, some of the components of this beer are some of the most compelling beers that we've tasted this year. And this together, pulling together the kind of Louis barley wine with that barrel-aged stout into one beer, it was just inescapable. I think that it spoke to a trend, but it also captured the true beauty that's possible approaching beer, not from a single stream kind of approach, but in this possibility that is created by thinking as a blender, thinking about how to pull together these kinds of components to make something that might be different or greater than the sum of its parts. And yeah, the sensory pieces are there, the caramel waves, just these elements that, build the kind of richness and depth to, the sip as you drink it. All of that is there. In the hands of less talented blenders and less talented brewers, it might have felt more clunky. In the hands of the team from Westbound and Down, it was an absolute masterwork.
So I'm excited about this next one too, about talking about it. This is Duvel Triple Hop Cashmere out of Belgium. And I think probably during the pandemic, our beer experiences probably, I think it's fairly universal, have been more insular than usual. So to have the, foreign beer crack in here is good, I think. But this is a beer I've been lucky enough to find here locally in Bangkok also. And it hits different. There's some different layers here. One, to go back a bit to that Cloudburst beer and Kate's description of the hops there are just some kind of unique sort of traits that we don't often get in hops. And I get excited by that kind of thing. So many of the IPAs and hoppy beers that we try these days are all kind of going for that same tropical fruit, juicy target. And so I kind of hanker for something else all the time. And so when you get something that hits differently, I get kind of excited. And that's what this one does for me. The cashmere is normally it is usually one of those fruity hops. You got the lemon, lime, melon. It can do different things. This one hits me as minty lemongrass. It's noble-ish the way it works with the yeast in this beer. And you're putting that on top of the sort of the classic, highly accomplished, delicate Duvel construction, where you have this bruiser of an ale, and this is 9.5% alcohol, and the alcohol is a piece of it. It's a piece of that flavor too. You can taste it. It's there, and that little bit of sweetness, and then on the top you have this sharpness from the hops. This bitterness. It's more bitter than the classic Duvel. And so a lot of the people who remember Duvel back in the old days will say, "Oh, Duvel's not as bitter as it used to be. It's sweeter and softer now." Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. And so they embrace the triple hop as how Duvel used to be. Okay, I don't know. I can't say, but I can say that I do like what that bitterness and what that extra hop character does for Duvel. And they don't mess with the Duvel underneath. They're really just layering on a bit of interesting hops with this triple hop series. The Citra being the one that's most commonly available, also delicious, but I just love the way this cashmere one hits and does differently. And it's very different from the Citra version for me. And it's something I've been enjoying a lot of. And it is we could put Duvel on this list probably in a year. It is, that great and recognized and highly accomplished. But the triple hop is such a fascinating beer, and one that's fun to pick apart and get into, and it's a different experience every time. And so it is one of our top 20 beers of 2021. Pretty excited about our next issue too, Jamie. We've got some stuff on brewing Duvel and Duvel type beers, and we're going to get into the details of that. It's going to be pretty cool.
Joe, are you saying that people should subscribe to Craft Beer and Brewing to make sure that they stay on top of the beautiful content that we're pulling together for them on how to brew Belgian beers in compelling ways?
People should do what they want, but I just don't want them to miss out. We're digging deep on the technical details. We are going deeper than people have gone before on Duvel next issue, and I think people might want to be there for it.
I mean, if you subscribe now, then you can get the Best in Beer issue right now delivered to your inbox, and you'll also get the next issue, which is our deep dive into Belgian style beers. You're right. What's next on our list of best beers in 2021?
It's another Pilsner.
I'm shocked.
The beers speak for themselves. We just have to add some words.
Well, in
Uh,
this one, like our judges rated it so, and so, I mean, who are we to tell them that they're wrong?
Absolutely, and this is a brewery that I'm surprised hasn't actually made it onto the best in beer list before. This is Chuckanut, now out of Burlington, Washington. Until recently, out of Bellingham, they have left their original space in Bellingham to go down to their bigger plant in the Skagit Valley. But they're still there, still going strong. And we were there back in May visiting for podcasts, and we got to visit with Will and Mary Kemper and got to taste through some of their sort of, classic beers. And it's really hard when you're tasting perfect beers and taking notes and you don't really want to write the word perfect down, because deep down you're like, no beer's perfect, right? No beer's perfect. Can't be perfect, but it seemed pretty perfect. This one is one of those that's just sort of like, just nails it. And
Our judges gave it a 99 out of 100. So, just a hair off of perfect.
And there's a whole wall of medals, GABF and World Beer Cup medals hanging on the wall there that testify to what they're doing. So it's not just, but it's such I'm jealous of people who live up there and can get this beer all the time whenever they want to. This could be your fill up the fridge in the garage beer, and you could have it, just drink it whenever you want to. That's amazing to me. It's one of those beers where it looks as good as it tastes. You're getting that beautiful foam on top. You're going to get those, assume your glass is properly clean, you're going to get those beautiful stripes of lace that tell the story, as you go down. That herbal nose, you're getting the mint, the lemongrass, floral, woodruff, that just singing the best of noble hops. And then that just right bitterness. All the flavors are crystal clear in there. There's nothing to get in the way of it. And again, it is one of those that you can just stop thinking about it and drink it, and you're going to want another one anyways.
Next up on our list is a brewery out of Denver, our mutual friend. The beer is called Times Arrow. This is their classic 7.7%, just barely double IPA. And our mutual friend, if you've followed Craft and Brewing, or you are a subscriber to our Brewing Industry Guide, Industry Focused Beer magazine, we have done a case study on our mutual friend. They are a wonderful, small, local, taproom focused brewery in the River North neighborhood of Denver. And Times Arrow is the West Coast style or American style IPA that they've been brewing since they started. Like, this is their classic approach. Talking to Jan Chudkowski, their head brewer and one of the founders, he was excited about how this beer rated, but with our blind panel, because, of course, it rated 99 out of 100. An absolutely fantastic beer. He was excited because it both felt modern, but this was the same recipe that they've been brewing for years and years and years. Why did it now find itself elevated to this kind of level? I am not sure. Maybe that's, a development of the ingredients. You could say that it's other kinds of decisions that the brewer makes, but I would love to believe that it is simply the result of honing and honing and honing, iteration, and this very, very small, minute changes that happen through to any kind of beer as it's brewed continuously by brewers that care about the result and are continuously focused on small improvements to the quality of that beer. I think that's it. The recipe hasn't changed. The hops are the hops and the recipe is the recipe. And yet, having said that, as we know, beers do improve the more you brew them. It's a clever challenge that we find ourselves in this world of new all the time, and everything is a new beer, and consumers want new things all the time. Brewers get better at brewing beers the more times that they brew them. And I think this beer is an absolute example of that through honing and through continual improvement and through continued iteration, they've built a West Coast IPA that both feels thoroughly modern and also classic at the same time. It's a beautiful beer. Highly recommend it. One of our best 20 in 2021. And that brings us to our 20th beer of our best 20 and 21, Spindletap Aceite Crudo. This one is an Imperial Stout. I am drinking some right now. It is not barrel aged, and oh my God, how can we not have a can we have a non-barrel aged Russian Imperial Stout on this list? You know, the world doesn't end with barrel aged beers. I believe, and I think you and I both agree on this, Joe, that there's a beautiful space for beer outside of some of the more consumer focused ways of, pushing buttons to drive sales. This beer, that kind of style of Russian Imperial Stout is something that I drank a lot of when I was getting into beer, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I think for a lot of us in a certain generation in craft beer, the idea of Russian Imperial Stout, influenced by beers like North Coast, Old Rasputin, and others, it feels so familiar that we might take it for granted. And I felt that way about this beer until the moment that I opened it and poured it for our blind panel as they were tasting through stouts. And even in the midst of beers that were barrel aged, that had much more intense flavors in varying ways, when we tasted this beer, there was just this palpable buzz amongst the judges. Like it's fascinating to see it, because you can tell you're onto something special. You know that everyone's on this wavelength. Like, the judges are just trying to hide the smile, right? Like, you just can't help that physical reaction of, oh man, I'm really excited to be drinking this right now, but I don't want to play all my cards because we're supposed to be stoic and judging. And, and that was this beer for all of us, where as we got into it, you could just watch that like little corner of everyone's mouths just like trying to curl up into that little smile, and they knew that we were onto something. The things that make it beautiful, these incredible layers of caramel flavor throughout it. Yes, stout should be roasty, it should be bitter, it should be big, it should be bold, but the thing that makes a great one is understanding how to build those kinds of layers, how to build that support through the middle of the beer so that it's not just bitter and roasty and then a giant gap down to those kinds, or up to those kinds of, top notes. This beer is thoroughly supported through that spectrum. There are these beautiful caramel layers throughout it. Little hints of sweetness, but not enough to set you off from the kind of beautiful bitterness that kind of defines it. And so, pulling that together in a non-barrel aged beer to drive the kind of excitement with our judges that would deliver a score of 99, it's truly exceptional. And it's even more interesting that this brewery, Spindletap, is really known as a haze factory. They're a Houston Haze. They make hazy, sweet beers for people. And yet this beer is, I think, one of the most compelling examples of Russian Imperial Stout, non-barrel aged, that I've tasted in years. And so there it is. That wraps up our best 20 beers in 2021. And so congratulations to all of those brewers. We have trophies that are in the mail to all of those breweries, tap handle trophies, courtesy of our friends at Bolter and Crislin, who have made these gorgeous ceramic tap handle / trophies that are suitable for either putting on a mantle or screwing onto your tap handle at your brewery. Congratulations to all of them. Thank you to all of our readers who have voted in our reader survey and helped us create this data that we've been able to present to you. Thank you to Kate Bernat and Stan Haranos, who helped us judge for our Editor's Picks, the best in 2021. Obviously, Joe, thank you for joining me here on this special episode of the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jamie. And thank you all for reading. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening.
Look for more fun stuff with Joe and me. We're gonna hit the road in 2022. We've got some grand plans ahead of us. I think Europe is in the cards. We're gonna put some cool stuff together for everybody as this podcast continues to grow and develop and become even more of what you expect and love from us. The Total Glycol System Design Specialists at G&D Chillers offer the most experience in the industry. BSG's FSSC certified facility in Yakima brings you only the very best hops from farmer to fermenter. Old Orchard's economies of scale keep prices low and quality high. NA is no problem with the Alchemator from ProBrew. Get 10% off your next order from Mountain Rose Herbs with code CRAFTBEER10 and make your system 100% food safe with Clarion lubricants. If you'd like to support this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button. We bring you great brewing content from some of the world's most inspiring brewers, and our all-access subscriptions bundle magazines with exclusive digital content and video classes that you can't find anywhere else. Great classes like the one we have up now with Vinny Chilurzo and Taylor Lane of Russian River Brewing on oxygen and the brewing process. And I'll tell you, if you've never watched Vinny hand bottle on foam and with purging and without, and then test it on an Anton Par TPC 5000, and you just haven't lived, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button, choose all access, and check out how you can access this content. Next week, tune in. You'll hear Joe's personal critics list. You'll hear my critics list. We'll hear critics lists from Stan, from Cape or Not, from Summer Kadari, Alex Kidd. Check out the new issue as it hits newsstands, as it hits your mailbox as a subscriber, of course. And if you're not a subscriber yet, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, and become one to get immediate access. Until next week, cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.